gather everyone together and prepare for battle. The tragic event involving the USS Indianapolis is considered one of the most devastating disasters in the history of the U.S. Navy. If you've watched Steven Spielberg's popular film from 1975, Jaws, one of the most gripping moments in the movie is a monologue by the character Quint, recounting the brutal shark attack on the crew of the USS Indianapolis. If you thought this was just a creation of the clever screenwriter for the movie, let us inform you of all the horrifying details. Today we will examine the deadliest shark attack in human history. But before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Interesting Day. On July 26, 1945, the USS Indianapolis completed a mission that would have a significant impact on world history. It transported the necessary components for the first functional atomic bomb to the island of Tinian, where the bomb, known as Little Boy, would be assembled. Shortly after, the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, resulting in the death of approximately 80,000 people. After delivering the components, the Indianapolis was sent to join the USS Idaho in the Philippines to assist in preparations for a Japanese mainland invasion. Setting out on its own, the ship was traveling at a speed of 17 knots when its journey was abruptly halted during the early hours of July 30, 1945. A Japanese submarine fired 2 torpedoes at the Indianapolis, causing a sudden and violent end to its voyage. The ship was hit directly, causing it to split in two. The order to abandon ship was given, but not everyone could escape in time. Within just 12 minutes, the massive vessel sank, leaving approximately 300 men trapped inside who were never heard from again. Another 900 or so ended up in the water, unaware that their fate would be arguably worse than those who went down with the ship. As the Indianapolis sank rapidly, chaos ensued, resulting in numerous injuries and a lack of proper equipment for those who managed to get off. Around 879 servicemen initially survived the sinking, but many did not have life preservers and had to constantly struggle to stay afloat. Even those who obtained life vests found themselves helplessly bobbing in the water, unable to do much else. The sinking of the Indianapolis happened swiftly, with the crew sending out SOS signals until they could no longer do so. Despite the Navy receiving these distress signals, they were not taken seriously for unknown reasons. Even when the ship did not arrive at its destination on time, no suspicion arose, and no search parties were sent to find the ship or its survivors. Sunrise brought a gruesome sight as blood stained the water, attracting sharks. The survivors tried to stay together in groups, but inevitably, someone would separate and be carried away by the currents. Once alone, the sharks swiftly attacked, causing screams to echo before bodies were pulled under. While the survivors in the water faced constant danger from shark attacks, there was a temporary respite for some. Occasionally, bodies trapped in the sunken Indianapolis would rise to the surface, providing an alternative source of food for the sharks that required less effort. Unfortunately, although this slowed down the destruction of the survivors, it ultimately couldn't save many. At this point, the sharks were in a frenzied feeding state, and only a limited number of individuals managed to survive. Despite their efforts to fend off the sharks by kicking, screaming, and other tactics, the survivors had to endure more days of relentless shark attacks. Nevertheless, their attempts did manage to drive the sharks away at times. The survivors of the Indianapolis could see numerous shark fins circling them on the water's surface. Below, the sharks persisted in their attacks. However, they didn't always immediately attack their prey. Instead, they sometimes bumped against the sailors without launching an immediate assault. This tactic aimed to deceive the sailors and lull them into a false sense of security before the sharks struck. Dragging their victims into the depths, each attack intensified the bloody waters, fueling the sharks' bloodlust. While the sharks posed the most immediate threat, they were not the only danger the survivors faced. Without access to fresh water in the saltwater surroundings, many succumbed to thirst during the days they were stranded. Those who attempted to drink the saltwater experienced delirium and hallucinations. Additionally, the waterlogged life vests made it increasingly difficult to stay afloat, resulting in several men dying in the water before the sharks could reach them. Several survivors on the third day discovered floating crates in the water and tied them together. Although not strong enough to be used as a raft, the crates served a vital purpose of drying out the life preservers. The men would squeeze the life vests by hand, place them on top of the crate raft, and put them back on when they were dry. This system allowed more survivors to stay afloat for longer. Additionally, one of the crates contained partially rotten potatoes, which the survivors carefully rationed to sustain themselves. On the fourth day at 11 a.m., Lieutenant Wilbur C. Gwynn accidentally spotted the survivors while flying a bomber on patrol. He immediately called for help, and the USS Cecil J. Doyle destroyer, located nearby, was alerted and diverted to rescue the survivors. Lieutenant Adrian Marks, a seaplane pilot assigned to assist with the rescue, witnessed survivors being attacked by sharks and used his plane to rescue those in the most danger. Eventually, Marks had to tie survivors to the wings of the plane due to overcrowding, but he managed to save 56 men. Despite some damage to the plane, Marks successfully landed it. Several months after the tragic incident, Captain Charles McVeigh of the USS Indianapolis found himself facing a court-martial. It was alleged that McVeigh had failed to navigate his ship in a zigzag pattern, which could have evaded Japanese submarines. Many have questioned whether this was a case of the Navy unfairly blaming the captain to divert attention from its own mistakes. It is worth noting that McVeigh was the only captain to be court-martialed for losing a ship during World War II. In 2000, Congress finally recognized that the charge against him was baseless and cleared his name. Sadly, this exoneration came posthumously as McVeigh had tragically taken his own life in 1968. When multiple individuals perish due to shark attacks, it is typically because of a series of assaults by the same shark, which limits the number of possible attacks. Take for instance, the Matawan man-eater in 1916, which killed 4 people and injured another. However, these 5 incidents occurred over a span of 10 days. Finding anything that can even remotely compare to the horrifying devastation endured by the survivors of the USS Indianapolis is exceedingly difficult. The sheer abundance of sharks and the extended feeding period made the incident exceptionally deadly, to a degree that is unlikely to be witnessed again. So what are your thoughts about this nightmare fuel? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us on Interesting Day. See you next time.